Mayor Curry, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so good morning. So another development overnight. Look, if you go back 2 days ago, the models at the time suggested that we would have direct impacts coming in as early as sometime the end of the weekend, beginning of the week. The storm trajectory has changed significantly over the last couple days, and in the last 24 hours or so, it's slowed significantly. So it now looks like landfall on Tuesday, somewhere south of us, at a moving at a very slow speed. What I want to communicate to people is that models are still suggesting that it could turn north and take days to get to us. So we have to pay attention. We have to be engaged. While you're enjoying your weekend, make sure that you're tuning into your local news, that you're listening and you're watching, so you understand if and when there's going to be an impact. There's still a major storm out there that could have a major impact on us. You'll recall, I believe it was Matthew 2 years ago, when it looked like it was going to be a direct hit. Then it kind of wobbled off. Even though it wasn't a direct hit, we had major damage because of the bands that came in. So these things are unpredictable. People need to pay attention and remain engaged.
And what's the city doing in the event that we see major flooding in our area?
So Public Works has been out clearing drainage and debris and making sure that the infrastructure that we have in place is prepared and functions as it should. And so we're ready. We're prepared to deal with it.
Does the city use sandbags in any areas in downtown?
We do not. We do not use sandbags. Folks can get access to sandbags if they choose to, but we don't use sandbags.
Have you had a chance to go out and inspect some of those areas that were hard hit during Irma and Matthew and see some of the progress ahead of Dorian?
Well, I've since those storms, I've been to a number of those neighborhoods numerous times, just talking to people, checking in with them, given the stress that they were under. And so the city is prepared for this. We obviously all hope that this does not impact us. I understand that, look, we've been monitoring this now for days. People have been tuned in, they've been shopping, getting their supplies. So everybody's been at a high level of stress and preparation, and they're probably tired as this thing has slowed down, and I get that. But what I don't want folks to do is to tune out at this point. This is still very real. This could still have tropical storm or hurricane force winds once it makes landfall if it turns north like some of the models say.
Can you give us an update on the federal and state resources that have now been announced overnight?
Yeah, so we were with the governor. I was with the governor the last 2 days. State of emergency gives the state access to the financial resources they need to act quickly. Was in touch. The White House reached out. The president's office reached out last night just to let me know that if and when we need them, they're here and ready to help. The state relationship is the one that we use immediately because we coordinate. If there's an evacuation, we coordinate to make sure that we're using the proper roads in the right direction with Florida Department of Transportation. If there has to be bridge closures. Look, we are prepared. The city's prepared. The state's prepared. We're just watching a storm now that's moving very slow.
How much ground have crews been able to cover here in the city, just clearing trees and things of that nature?
They've been working for days, so around the clock, and will continue to work. But if folks have an issue, if they have a debris issue, or they feel like they have something that needs to be cleaned out, call 630 City and report it, and we'll get to it and get it done.
Mayor, for people who are in zones A and B in particular, big question: are they going to be called to evacuate? Is the coast clear enough for you to say they're not going to have to evacuate, or what's the status of that in terms of any?
No, there still is possibility. What's the likelihood? I'd say, look, if this thing turns north and remains trop storm force winds or even Cat 1 winds, there's still a chance of evacuation because of flooding and any number of events. But it's too early to make that determination. I would encourage people to know their zone. Today, know your zone. And if we have to do that, people will know how and when to react. Those two zones are about 250,000 people, which we need to move a lot of people. Also considering if we're evacuating, that means people down south have probably started evacuating. But we've been through this before and coordinated it with the state and with the sheriff and his team, and we know how to do this.
And what's the protocol for both those that live around the beaches and the river? Because I know there's different protocols for each. A lot of people always talk about the beaches, but they forget about people that live near the river.
Know your zone. I mean, if you know your zone, you'll know to evacuate. The other thing we will communicate, in addition to zones, if we have an event, is we can identify specific areas, whether it's beaches areas or river areas or creek areas that are prone to flooding, And so if someone's not in an evacuation zone, but they hear us talking about that area, we'll tell them you should probably leave.
And if they do evacuate, how will people be let back in to their homes? How do we know they live at areas like the beaches?
Well, it's all driven by safety, and I would tell you, if you look at the way we've operated, this would be our third storm in 4 years. The last two storms, from many years ago, we learned from stress points on people. I worked with the beaches mayors the last two storms, and we got those bridges and those beaches open quickly. We got JFRD in there fast to make sure it was safe, and we moved people in. That is our objective. Get the place clean and safe as quickly as possible so people can get back to their homes. We did the same thing on post-storm cleanup. If you go back years, there was a time where it took months to clean up debris. We had then and we would have now prepared to move quickly and get debris picked up quickly as possible and get people's lives back to normal.
Yes, with the storm slowing, does that mean that unlikely to have a decision today on whether to evacuate or not? It may be over the weekend in terms of that decision point.
The speed of the storm, if it stays at this speed, highly unlikely to have a decision today. Possible tomorrow, but still not likely. You're looking at about, and these are estimates, we use our professional judgment, about 48 hours advance notice to get people so they can get out and move and leave. So it makes landfall Tuesday. At this speed, when would it impact Jacksonville? If it did, back up based on models about 48 hours, and that's when people could expect. But don't tune out now, because if you tune out and this thing changes speed, I mean, look how much it's changed in the last few days. There's been significant changes in the models.
And I know we talked a little bit about the FSU Boise game yesterday. Has the city been able to work out any sort of system for refunds?
Yeah, folks are getting emails that purchase tickets, and we can get you that information so you can report directly if folks are trying to figure out how to get their refunds. But they're fully refundable, and they'll get their money back.
On that note, Sheriff, how does canceling the game sort of impact scheduling for officers, and same thing with Chief? You know, how does this impact first responders and
So the game doesn't really have an impact on obviously we don't deploy to the game. So, and as the mayor said a couple of times, you know, we're just watching the forecast as it continues to evolve, and it changes rapidly day to day, and so it changes our plans a little bit for what we're preparing for. But just to reiterate, the important thing for everybody is to stay tuned and not tune out over the holiday weekend. Stay plugged in. Just as quickly as it slowed down, it could pick up speed and change direction. So. You know, we're talking about weather, and it always changes, and we know that. So we're staying plugged in, and we'll make decisions, you know, based on the best information we have at the time.
Is JSO making any adjustments this weekend, in Monday into Tuesday? You know,
Really just monitoring right now. I mean, we've got obviously people staffed here at the EOC, and we've been here for a couple of days already. And internally, we're making some notifications to people about what the work hours may be, and shifts may be, and different assignments may. So those conversations have been ongoing for a couple of days. But again, it evolves with the forecast, and so you know we're telling our people to stay flexible. Get your family squared away, make sure they're taken care of, because they're going to be working, you know, through the storm. So it's about us internal communication right now, and obviously just staying plugged in with all the city and state and federal partners and prepared.
All right.
Yes, Mayor, on the game, obviously it's possible tomorrow night. It could have been football weather. I mean, the storm's slowed down. Any regrets, second thoughts about the decision to move it out of Jacksonville?
None.
Okay.
If we had the information we had yesterday, with that information would make the same decision, because the speed and trajectory of that storm suggested that we were going to have to be making evacuations either at some point Saturday or some point Sunday. Under both of those scenarios, first scenario, you have a football game happening with people, tens of thousands of people visiting while we're asking our residents to leave. Next scenario is you'd have people visiting our city waking up on Sunday in hotel rooms while we're asking our people to leave. So, you know, when I spoke with the sheriff yesterday and our fire department and folks at the state level, there was a consensus that the wise thing to do would be to move the game. And look, it was my decision, and in fact, you know, we thought about moving it to Friday night. And this conversation around the table was, if you want to have a football game here Friday night, you can do that, and we'll try to manage it. But it wouldn't be the wisest decision. So we acted in the best interest of the people of Jacksonville and folks that would be visiting our city, and would do it again.
Yes, too. I mean, a lot of us as viewers, we're seeing all these spaghetti models and lines all over the place. You're making decisions like this. What's your assessment of how accurate, how good the forecasting is? Obviously, it's never going to be perfect, and there's all these variables, but has it gotten better than it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Kind of seems like every year now you got to make these decisions based on forecast models.
I'll say this, moving from years ago when someone watched the storms develop from the television in my home, now to working with the Weather Service, I have a better appreciation for what meteorologists and weather experts go through, because it is weather, and you have models that give you the best information at that time. But this is Mother Nature, and she could decide to speed, slow, or go away, and you just make decisions based on models and assumptions.
And Mayor Curry, have you heard anything from DCPS, any in regards to canceling classes next week? I know high school football is still scheduled for today, and then they canceled a few activities over the weekend, but any word about next week?
No, so they're in our briefings. With the briefings that we have here, we have all the independent agencies, including the superintendent and representatives from the school. But if you look historically, they'll make the decision, but they collaborate with us. And if you look historically how it's been done, if we have to evacuate folks, a couple of things. Some of those schools are shelters. The other piece is you don't want to be evacuating certain residents and still having school take place, because it also sends a message. It's a mixed message to people about what do I do. So I would expect they'll make that decision in the days ahead as we're making decisions about whether or not an evacuation is necessary and what flooding an event could look like.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank
Curry.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.